All right, good afternoon. I'm going to call the August 25th, 26th regular meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education to order at 4:32. This meeting is being held in the administrative offices, 720 Santa Barbara Street. The closed session is scheduled for 4:30 and the open session is scheduled for 6. Trustee Escobedo is absent. Trustee Munoz will be joining us shortly. All other trustees are present. We'll restate this once we come back to closed session or open session, but action items tonight will require approval by a quorum of the board. For this meeting, passage of any motion will require 3 or 4 affirmative votes. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Do we have any public comment on closed session items? That said, I would like to adjourn to closed session. We will expect to be back approximately at 6 p.m. We will be covering conference with legal counsel, public employee discipline renewal, conference with labor negotiators, employee performance evaluation. Those items in closed session. Thank you. All right, good evening and welcome to the August 25th, 2026 regular meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education. We're returning from closed session and reconvening the regular meeting at 6:10. A quorum is present. Trustee Escobedo is absent. All other trustees are present. Action items require a quorum of the board. Therefore, passage of motions tonight will require 3 or 4 affirmative votes. The board appreciates the public's participation. We will conduct the meeting according to the published agenda and applicable board policies and laws. I'd like to request that any public comment cards that have not yet been turned in are done. Do so please within the next 5 minutes. So we'll move into language access.
Thank you. We have Spanish interpretation and we have ASL interpretation available through Zoom. Buenas tardes. Tenemos interpretación al español disponible y también interpretación al lenguaje de señas estadounidense. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. All please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The board took no action in closed session tonight. We will start this evening with the student board member report from our student trustee, Victoria Martinez Peñaranda.
Thank you.
I'm getting closer, right?
No, yeah, you're doing great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I divided my report up into different sections. So starting off with leadership activities and professional development, I had the privilege and honor to serve as the MC for the district-wide annual kickoff event, and I was very grateful to see students from AHA's Youth Advisory Board invited as keynote speakers to share a powerful message with our entire district community. I also attended a fiscal crisis management and assistance team workshop and gained a stronger understanding of rules and regulations governing ASB funds and daily operations. And then moving on to student voice and engagement, I met with the Director of Technology, Mr. Rob Cooper, to discuss increasing student representation and connected an interested student with the district AI task force, as there's been students expressing interest in joining the task force. And then in terms of gathering student input and promoting the Student Advisory Council, I created a student input forum for students to share concerns and ideas and what's working well on their campuses. And so I'm working with the district staff to ensure the forum reaches students so that they can share input. I also created a Student Advisory Council flyer and application to support district-wide recruitment, because I want as many students as possible to be represented on this council and have the opportunity to become involved. And then moving on to campus climate and student concerns. So Tech with Intent is currently a major topic of discussion on the San Marcos campus. Students have shared that there is some confusion around how the new technology expectations are being implemented, particularly as teachers are also adjusting to and navigating the new restrictions. Several students from San Marcos have shared that the ban on YouTube has impacted their ability to study and understand class materials. And then moving on to general updates, over the summer when I got the chance to attend the district's Leadership Institute, I had the opportunity of connecting with district leaders, and one of the leaders I met was the executive director of elementary education, who helps put on an impactful community service event. And I'm inviting every student, everyone who works with the district to attend a coastal cleanup day. The coastal cleanup will take place on Saturday, September 19th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at East Beach, and will meet at the volleyball courts. The coastal cleanup day is organized by Explore Ecology in the County of Santa Barbara Resource Recovery and Waste Management, and the California Coastal Commission organizes a statewide event, and students will be able to earn community service hours. As always, please remember to lead with kindness, empathy, and curiosity. That concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That will bring us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Maldonado.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We are completing day 5 of the new school year today, as Victoria has said, and I'm pleased to share we have had a strong start so far. I've had the opportunity to visit many of our schools over the past several days, and the learning energy is palpable. I want to thank our teachers and staff who worked so hard to get this year going. We have a lot to celebrate and a lot to work on still. But we are a district on the move and will not stop our continuous improvement for students. Of course, as many have felt if you just came in from the outside, this second week of school is proving to be especially hot in this area. We have communicated our protocols with families and staff last Friday and are continuing to monitor the situation as it develops. I do want the board and public to know that we use the National Weather Service heat risk map to make decisions, which bases its rating on a combination of temperature and humidity. We are making adjustments to the day and rotating students in and out of classrooms with air conditioning to keep classes cool. Not all of our schools and not all of our classrooms have air conditioning. We will stay in communication with our principals, staff, and families if any changes occur or the forecast gets more severe, in which case we will take actions like shortening the school day, just to name a few, in addition to moving through classrooms. Lastly, we're excited to share some updates to our literacy efforts in elementary schools between teacher training and a new expansion of the literacy screener and the board support for letters training. We're giving our educators the best tools possible. I want to invite up Assistant Superintendent Dr. Sonia Wilson to provide this update. Welcome, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you and good evening. I'm excited to share some important updates regarding literacy at the elementary and also the secondary level. Would like to highlight for you this evening our letters implementation and where we are at this point as we launch the 26-27 school year. You can see the cohorts across the top who have implemented or are underway with their professional learning in letters. So specifically, I'd like to highlight for the 26-27 year, we have cohorts 3 and 4 that will be beginning their professional learning experience. Cohort 2 will be in its second year, and this will also be the second year for our administration who is undergoing training in the letters admin portion of professional learning. The goal by 27-28 or by 28-29 is to have 100% of our K through 3 teachers trained, and also want to note that any new teachers in the K through 3 space that are onboarded this year will join cohorts 3 or 4. So just to outline for you briefly the sequence of professional learning for our teachers in cohorts 3 and 4, you can see there's a combination of using our professional learning days as well as having some pull-out day work. So that synchronous work will be the workday work, and the asynchronous work will be on the teacher's own time, and that's what they'll be receiving the compensation of a stipend for. Then lastly, here in the elementary space, I'd like to highlight that based on the success of the M-Class screener in K2, we have expanded and launched officially our grades 3 through 6 literacy screener. So we have already trained teachers at the beginning of the year, and there will be some ongoing training and support looking at results in October and support in this implementation. You can see on the left just the windows of the administration, which will mirror our K2 windows, and we're just excited. This was based on teacher request and as well as our administrative request, so they could see the power of it, and so we'll be taking that information and that practice up into grades 3 through 6. And lastly, for secondary now, I'd like to highlight for you something that's underway. We are looking to bring the science of reading training up into the secondary space. We have our partners, Lexia, who have letters training for the elementary. They also have a secondary training that is digital, so it's asynchronous work. And the teachers would go through a series of modules. You can see word recognition, language comprehension, reading comprehension, and writing would be the focus areas of those modules. Our target audience would be our junior high, ELA, ALD, special ed teachers, as well as we have some high school intervention teachers that are really just starting this year to teach a course fully in literacy intervention. And so we really want to support them and their development as they're implementing new curriculum to supplement that with this. This would all be voluntary. So this wouldn't be something every teacher would do, but we would look similarly to how we started with letters to get volunteers to participate in this with outreach to those audiences. This would all be pending funding availability, so that is still under works. The plan is under development, but we wanted to highlight it for you so you knew that we have intention in this space as well. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
All right, that will bring us to the public comments on non-agenda matters, and I think we have 3 comments only. Before we begin the public comment portion of the board, would like to thank everyone who has joined us to share their perspectives. Your voice is a vital part of our district's governance. Under the provision of the California Brown Act, the board is legally prohibited from engaging in a back and forth dialogue or taking immediate action on items not specifically listed on tonight's agenda. Because of this, we will not be responding directly to your comments this evening. However, please know that silence does not mean indifference. We value your input and take your concerns seriously. Following this meeting, the board will work closely with the superintendent and district staff to ensure all comments are reviewed and that appropriate follow-up or research is conducted. We ask that you please adhere to our time limits so that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. Thank you for your partnership in supporting our students. Considering the number of non-agenda comments tonight, we will leave our comment time at the normal 3 minutes. I don't think that risks putting us at the end of a 20-minute period, so we'll just move on with that. We would like the people that are here for comments to be ready to come up as soon as the name is called. Thank you.
Thank you, President Banning. For public comment, we have York Shingle, followed by Rich Lashwa, followed by Moni DeWitt.
Good evening. I'm York Shingle, SBTA president. The start to this year has had some ups and downs. First, thank you for continuing to pay 40% of my salary. That was an up. Unfortunately, in that meeting, there was also a down when I was encouraged to agree to working conditions that aren't in the contract. I'm not going to work around our bargaining team and the negotiation process, and I hope that was just a blip and not how the year is going to go. Then we got to the kickoff, and it was so great hearing from our students. The strength and confidence it took for them to get up in that room and speak to that huge audience is impressive. A lot of their messages were about how much teachers need to care for students. It speaks to the emotional labor that educators and other staff members have to do for our students. It's vitally important work. So I was then expecting to see professional development to help staff build their capacity to do more emotional labor, but there wasn't any. It also made me ask, how are district administrators modeling that emotional labor and support that we're expecting from our staff? So then I look at how our staff is being treated this year. Specials teachers in the elementary space are squeezed for every minute of their day in a way that is detrimental to their programs. Long-standing elementary PLCs were torn apart, and staffing at secondary sites is so tight because we're limiting how many classes students can take. We're moving in a direction where our SB Unified staff is being treated worse, while you're saying we need more compassion and understanding. This isn't a standalone issue. DEMLAC was told they'd have input on the new Director of College, Career, and Multilingual Success. But then somebody was appointed who didn't interview for that role. This isn't a criticism of that new director. I haven't met her. She could be great. She could be perfect. The issue is the district will say one thing, we value community input, we value your voices, and then do something else. I really hope there is work being done to help repair the relationships between DEMLAC and that person coming in, and to between the district folks who said that that would happen and it didn't. As of right now, I don't think any of that has started. If you've listened to me over the years, and you have because you have to, this just continues the practice of saying the right thing, but not following through with it in your actions. The great Dolly Parton said, "Figure out who you are and do it on purpose." Well, apparently, I'm someone whose mission is to hold y'all accountable to the things that you say are important to you and to this community. When you say one thing and do another, it tells us that your word doesn't matter, which makes working for you all really difficult. Show us you care about us and follow through, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rich Lashua, followed by Moni DeWitt.
Excuse me. The school year has started, but I cannot. In June, I began discussions with potential choreographers for our fall play. The district received our Prop 28 money on July 20th, but schools cannot expect the funding until late September, possibly October. That's almost the end of the first quarter of the school year and completely unacceptable for anyone we're trying to contract within this community for work that began last week or earlier. The choreographers canceled, leaving me scrambling to come up with a new show that I could be ready to teach solo in less than 3 weeks. Also, I have a Disney workshop planned for my kids in December. Payment is due 60 days out, which means I would need to instantly approve this field trip and start writing checks for it whenever that money is released to sites. Not a very low anxiety way of doing our jobs. Meanwhile, Santa Barbara High hired their new music teacher, Mr. Gonzalez, in mid-July, almost a month behind other music programs that were already preparing their summer band camps to get ready for the fall season. I agreed to assist him with instruction as he couldn't find any non-district employees that were willing to work in July and August for pay in October. The sad reality is, I'm used to it. My first conversation with my new principal last month was about securing stipends missing from my payroll. They'd been processed in January, but had not been paid out in June. This is now the 13th time something like this has happened in my 16 years here. The money always arrives, but semi-annual tardiness is becoming the norm. Can you imagine pulling this on a football team? Phew. Further, the Marjorie Luke Theater, one of only 3 professional theaters in California on the campus of a public junior high school, is being reevaluated to ensure the district is properly serving kids with this agreement. Maybe if more kids had access to classes in that theater with productions that were funded sooner than 3 weeks before opening night, you'd find some of the razzle-dazzle that you're looking for. Maybe if we'd stop kicking the neediest schools and programs while they're down, we'd see the results we wish to see. The district's receiving millions of unexpected funds from the state soon. As union negotiations simmer and everyone wonders what exactly discretionary funds looks like, I need you to understand before the angry yelling finger pointers come in here and the snarky signs are posted, that on the financial side of things, there are tremendous cracks that need to be addressed. Not by rolling heads, but by actually fixing the system. Because right now, most of the best teachers are succeeding despite this district, not in partnership with it. If we're going to correct course and minimize conflict, the best way is to put as many of those dollars in the classroom as we can, as soon as possible. Let's go change the world.
Thank you.
Hello, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and thanks for all your public service. So I'm here because I have heard of the influx in special ed funds, and I'm both curious and concerned about where those funds will wind up, and if we're going to be excellent stewards and keep track of it kind of line by line, like, a self-employed individual would have to do. Anyway, and piggybacking on Dolly Parton and recognizing her father was illiterate, and that's why she contributed greatly and spread out this reading program that's touched everybody. I think United Way has it here. And seeing the report Ms. Wilson gave about where we are on cohorts, it looks like we're doing pretty good in 1 through 3. But I would like to see us go beyond intentionality for the secondary students. And for a long time now, I've been explaining, and I'm sure Mr. Vance knows because he did make La Cuesta a separate item, but the special ed kids and even some of our EL kids, they kind of get forgotten, and I don't think we really believe in them or demonstrate our belief in them. And without that, they already, because they're behind, they already maybe lack the confidence that a typical student may have. So I think it's also very important that we demonstrate it here and in our reports, and that we go further than intentionality. Like, I'm thinking we have that money. We should find out what is the money it would cost to train some of those secondary teachers, because and just know what's the price tag on that and compare it, and also the price tag on things that Rich said. And all those things are things that we really want. And I think we need to quantify them so we can have real discussions and not just find out, oh, they did this with it instead, and now we have another report, but we keep kicking the can down the road. And another thing I learned where I'm very concerned about along the same lines is the PEAK program. So what I've come to learn about it, it looks like it's good for some students. But when I looked at the finances, it was expensive. But, I don't know exactly how much it works out to each student. But what concerned me most was I found out that really the students who are closest to the finish line get invited to go there. I forget exactly what the GPA is, but it's those who are vulnerable students but who are doing better. And I've seen this before with special ed too, that it seems like our system is promoting the ones that are going to make the school system look good faster, and that we don't want to put in the time for those who require more intensive labor because, it's going to require more resources, and there's always other things for it to go, and those people are falling through the cracks. I look at La Cuesta, which had a special goal for 3 years for LCAP, and from 23-24, they had like 4-0. Anyway, it's 0-0. So we can do better. Let's be accountable, and let's take care of everyone, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
All right, that will bring us to our board member comments and communication. Anyone ready to go? No? No comments? Rose? No? All right. I would just like to share my participation and impression of the kickoff event. I was very impressed to see for the first time since I've been to one of these events 4 students as featured speakers. They were articulate, they were emotional, they reflected on good things about the district and challenges for us. And it was a remarkable moment, and I think a good way to start the school year. Also let you know that I participated with Trustee Caffrey in the first meeting of the Finance Committee for this year. I think most of our members were present, and the team is remaining the same for this year. So we'll have some consistency there, and we had some really good dialogue with information from our CFO in regard to the reserve policy, and we'll be continuing to look at that on our next meeting. So I wanted to say thank you for the preparation for that. Also attended the first meeting of this year of the Santa Barbara Education Foundation. The foundation is strong and doing good things for us. They're sponsoring a Love of Learning luncheon on November 20th, and the State of the Schools on 10/16. I think those are events that are indicative of the support of the foundation for the school district in general. Those are the items that I wanted to address, and that will move us to item G1, which is a report discussion item, Tech with Intent, Implementation Update, and Board Policy Development. Dr. Maldonado, will you introduce the item, please?
Yes, I have Mr. Vance and Mr. Cooper coming up to report on the work that's been done over the summer based on the resolution that was adopted at the end of June of this year by this board, which had many items already in place for us to complete, and that's the report you're getting information about at this time. Mr. Vance and Mr. Cooper, welcome.
Good evening, Board and President Banning and Superintendent Maldonado. Tonight we'll be providing you an update specifically on the actions that Information Technology Services Department has taken to address the directives from the board resolution. The resolution provided the direction and the current work, and this current work that we are doing is helping us develop the new policy. At this time, I'd like to bring up Director Rob Cooper to take this next slide.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. This is a familiar slide. It was shared during our last report about our tech reform that presents our roadmap of the different projects and initiatives that we are rolling forward. And importantly, it identifies down the left side of the slide the strategic roadmap, or those big buckets that we're putting these policies or these projects into, excuse me. As we shared at the last meeting, these projects have already begun at the end of the school year and heading into the summer. The summer blew by very quickly as we worked on these projects, but I wanted to very specifically acknowledge the project our team did around devices and the on-device content filtering initiative that was part of this projectscape. We found out, very late into the school year that we would need to pivot and collect 4,000 devices in order to reconfigure all of them almost one at a time by hand, because there is definitely a remote option to pull that old filter and a remote option to then push the new filter. But in order to have a very high level and a very high standard of completion in that project and make sure that our devices would be safe when we redistributed them, we needed to have hands on every single one. A huge thank you to the junior high schools who, coordinated that collection, the logistics behind filtering through all of those students for our collection, our reconfiguration, our organization, our labeling, our moving around the district to do the redistribution that we then needed to do with those 4,000 devices. And sure enough, those devices were ready to go for our students before and on the first day of school with a new filter. Everyone signed in with their Apple IDs and to provide the safest device that we could. This next slide takes those strategies, that implementation, and just presents it in a different format as far as where the projects lie under the initiatives that we're presenting with our tech reform. I want to highlight just a few things on the roadmap for you. First, starting with the systems and safety section. Particularly the off and away in K-12 and our K-8 restriction of devices during passing periods and lunch periods. The off and away policy has been in development for a few years, and it is very strong. We have multiple ways for our students to keep their devices off and away, whether it be in backpacks, in pouches, in cell phone hotels. This year, we've expanded off and away to include all personal devices or internet-connected devices. And this is something that we worked with our leadership teams during the Leadership Institute and are working with our teachers to understand and help enforce that all personal devices, whether that be your cell phone, your personal laptop, your Meta AI internet-connected glasses, All of these things are off and away so that we can provide a distraction-free and a safe learning environment when it comes to technology. And we also have found that within the first week, we are having a lot of success at our junior high schools with expanding that off and away to be during passing periods and lunch periods so that students do not replace staring at their phone all through their lunch period with staring at our iPads all through lunch period. Now we have all screens away during that time. I'm going to move us over to the educating students and families section. Something that we also put together this summer as our work was digital citizenship, building a digital citizenship framework for elementary, junior high, and high school. Again, presenting that at our Leadership Institute, working with principals to get that buy-in, that prioritization, and how that will roll out during the year. Elementary schools committed right away to doing their digital citizenship lessons within the first 10 days of school, many times before devices are even considered being handed out in that session. I got a report just today from our junior highs that our junior high librarians have taken that framework and those lesson suggestions and gone above and beyond with creating a lesson delivery plan, logistics and calendaring for those lessons. And I'm meeting with the high school librarians tomorrow in order to help them with their prioritization and their timing of the digital citizenship lessons that will be delivered there to every student. I also wanted to point out in that section the junior high school parent choice and after-school configuration. That was something that was presented in my last report, the idea that iPads would look different and have more restrictions automatically after school when they go home, and that would be something that families could opt into. That project has started. We are on step one, which is the infrastructure point of that project, where we are building servers and we are starting to fill in templates with code so that we can begin testing those configurations and making it happen. I'll take us then down to the policy and governance section. That is something Mr. Venz will present on later as far as our acceptable use policy and how we're driving our reform policy forward throughout the year. In procurement and audits, that is something else that Mr. Venz will go into detail for later in the presentation, but that project is also underway. The AI framework, I would like to use this opportunity to remind everyone that we have our Superintendent's AI Task Force that will be reconvening in September 24th. We have been doing work over the summer with that as well. We have been gathering resources, sample policies. We've been in communication with the focus groups that we have formed. And we have been adding more people to our mailing list who want to get involved and want to be informed. Particularly, we are excited to share that more and more students have been asking to be a part of the AI task force. We are adding student emails to the email list. They want to not only get those updates and be involved in what's going on to attend meetings, but some also have expressed their interest in participating in the focus groups as well. And then finally, with dashboard and reporting, this was also an ask from our parents and our community to have more insight or more transparency into what our devices are doing and what they're accessing. And I'm going to move on to that on our next slide to give you some more information there. So one of the things that was identified in our initiatives and our projects was to evaluate tools for stronger family choice, stronger family insights, perhaps stronger filtering and workflow. One of the platforms that we are evaluating is Lightspeed. Lightspeed came on our radar because that is what LA Unified is using, and they reported on the different dashboards and tools that they would be using with Lightspeed as part of their tech reform presentation. And I will say it looks very promising. When we talk about our tech platforms and we talk about what an IT department does, we talk a lot about interoperability, which is the way that all of our platforms, devices, networks, permissions, all have to work together. And a lot of times they have to work together in a certain order. And when this one over here updates, that has a bad effect on another one down the line. And when this one breaks, there's a ripple effect that breaks a lot of other different things. And the job of an IT department, our systems administrators, our network administrators, are to constantly be evaluating, improving, fixing, and rearranging that interoperability. And that also causes a lot of challenges when it comes to those kinds of things working together. So I say all that because what we're finding in Lightspeed is their offer or their platform is all in one. Many of these different platforms that we're using now are all housed in the same place when it comes to Lightspeed. So they are not just a content filter. They are not just a management system. They are not just a parent portal and tools. They're all of it together to help ease some of that interoperability. So in Family Choice, what we're looking at is having a parent portal available. The ability to pause web browsing, the ability to have more targeted control on the iPad. Right now, we're doing those things with Custodio, and we're doing those things with Jamf Parent. But again, maybe an interface where everything lives in the same place. Transparency in data. This is something very exciting for us as well, because this is something that other platforms have not been able to provide for us yet. This is the idea of being able to see what the devices are doing during the school day, what the devices are doing during home use, educational use versus non-educational use. It's not exactly screen time, how many minutes and seconds they're on everything, but it is usage and it is by the hour and looks to be a big improvement over the transparency that we have now. It also provides that safety aspect when we're talking about our workflow of vetting and approving platforms, getting those data privacy documents and things together. It houses all of that as well, with, again, the idea of that's not 3 different platforms that need to manage and work together, but something that is all under the same umbrella. Some added value as well. It not only does it have that content filtering and student safety monitoring for dangerous searches, it also has AI use monitoring, which is something that I think will become more and more important as time goes by. So that's one of the platforms we're looking at, and it looks very promising. We are not presenting Lightspeed as a final decision by any means tonight for the board, but what we are presenting is our next steps, which is to do a proof of concept with this company, with this platform. Of course, that will start very small in our lab environment in the office, but very quickly then move to an elementary school, very quickly move to a junior high school to see if it can take the stress that those students will put it through. And if all goes well and these things are working as advertised, we could be bringing this back to the board as early as December for approval and moving forward. All right, Mr. Venz.
All right, thank you. Well, one last thing that I just want to bring to your attention is that just specifically Alana Matlick, the district's auditor, has been working with Conrad to bring in a highly qualified tech company, Resolute Guard specifically, with experience working with school districts to do a third-party cybersecurity audit. This will be happening very soon here, and once the audit is complete, next steps will be determined based on the needs and gaps identified within that audit. One other thing too is that Ms. Matlick may be engaging California IT education site to conduct an even broader review of the IT department's structure, capacity, and guidance. That will be, operations. To get us a further understanding what's needed at the school district. As we gather feedback from staff, families, and students, we will use the following questions to help shape the board policy within these 6 areas. So for example, within the instruction, are the changes strengthening the instruction in our classrooms, right? So just to make sure what we are doing is really addressing what our intention is. The second one with the student development, are the parameters developmentally appropriate for each of the grade levels. The third one, which is access and supports, continuing to make sure that our students with IEPs and our EML students are able to access digital supports that they need. The next one is just actually aligning across all of the schools, making sure that they're implementing the guidelines consistently and throughout the school year. The next one with family choice, do families have the meaningful and useful options to use the tools needed in order to manage their student's device off campus, and making sure that it's user-friendly. And then the last one is really the technology tools. Specifically, are they filtering and monitoring and reporting and doing all the things necessary in order to make sure we have a robust technology system across the district. Board policy should establish enduring principles while operational guidance remains flexible as tools, needs, and practices evolve. This is one of the key ideas in particular that we learned when watching LA Unified develop their board policy. So they were using all of these following steps from resolution and all of the implementation actions that they were doing in order to guide the policy that they landed on. And that's what we will be doing. The timeline itself, I shared this with you the last time. So right now we're on August 25th with this report to you. The next one, September 14th, we want to go ahead and get a draft of the policy and send that out to our educational partners. Of course, the educational partners are our staff, parents, students, and community to get their input about the policy. On September 29th, just a little over 2 weeks, we'll gather that information, start doing the review, provide updates to you, the board, on what we're seeing. And then ultimately on October 13th, we would like to bring to you the board policy draft for adoption. We also know from this experience too, just recently with the resolution, that if we come to you on the 13th, and if there are changes that need to be made, we'll take that back and then come back to you the next board meeting. So with that, that is our report.
Excuse me, Steve, there is a slide on the Diligent webpage that I think you guys skipped. I'm not sure if it's in the presentation that you're using, which is the one before the policy that says audit, analysis, and action. I know it was uploaded to our public agenda, and I don't know if Sitlali, you can pull it up. Give us 1 minute, everyone. Thank you so much.
Back. Oh. Aha. All right, now my comments will make more sense. So again, Ms. Matlick, our auditor actually is engaging specifically Resolute Guard as our security audit. So that's in process. She's been working with Conrad on getting that moving forward. Again, these 3 steps, they come in, they audit our systems, our security systems, and then they'll identify what capacity or technical gaps that we might have. And then from that point, we will determine as a district on what are the appropriate actions to take in response to address those. That's something very specific with that. So, and that is my report.
Thank you. We do have one public comment on this.
Yes, we have 2.
Oh, 2. I apologize.
Yes, first we'll have Allison Bajurke, pardon? Bierke, okay, thank you. And then Mayra Oseguera.
Members of the board, I'm Allie Bierke, parent of 3 with my oldest now at Goleta Valley Junior High. Thanks to your efforts, she has a school iPad without unrestricted YouTube access, and the off and away lunch policy means her peers aren't isolating themselves on screens or watching horror videos at lunch. Thank you. However, let me state for the record and for anyone who does not have adolescents at home, what kind of content is still available to students. Despite improvements in content filtering, my 12-year-old can view explicit sexual imagery and explore themes that are intended for adults. She can consume graphic content celebrating extreme thinness for girls and dysmorphic bodybuilding for boys. She can enter her healthy height and weight into a pharmaceutical marketing page and learn that she might be eligible for GLP-1 inhibitors. If she asks Google, "What is a virgin?" she can access non-medical content advising her how to become a virgin again. And she can find material titled, "How to Tell She is a Virgin, 5 Physical Signs." She can find image content by querying "women suck," prominently featuring suck or swallow themes. If she enters an innocuous search term like Asian men, she gets provocative body pics. Because of a current block on the word condom, she cannot find information on how to put a condom on. She can, however, find plenty of information about female contraception, which strikes me as an absurd inequity. My point is that content filtering is the wrong approach to internet safety. It is clunky, inefficient, and reproduces the very inequities we are trying to combat. Content filtering must be accompanied by true structural and behavioral changes. The changes are the ones we're seeing at junior high and during lunch. The iPad must be off and away always, unless it is being used in a public or group context with monitoring for a specific educational purpose. It is not fair to expect parents to monitor these devices for the 18 hours a day that students are off campus. The district has promised to support parent choice, especially at the junior high level. But at the moment, I have no choice but to welcome this content into my home. If you are serious about ensuring these devices are used in a safe way and for education only, you must enact behavioral changes. You must figure out how to establish a new cultural norm that screens are for shared public use for education only. You are still providing children with unsafe, mobile, highly stimulating, tactile, and graphically engaging personal recreational devices. This will not change until you revise the one-to-one take-home model, figure out how to give parents choice, and invest money in curriculum change. Trying to make these devices safe through content filtering, etc., is a losing battle. And if you cannot make them safe, then where does this put us? Do we continue to encourage and utilize and send home unsafe devices, or do we hold firm to the district's first and foremost obligation to keep students safe and figure out another, better way to educate our children? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayra Oseguera.
So, buenas noches, o buenas tardes, miembros de la mesa directiva, Superintendente Maldonado. Mi nombre es Mayra Oseguera y soy un padre de 2 estudiantes en este distrito.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. My name is Mayra Oseguera, and I am a parent of 2 students in this district.
Considero que el plan para abordar el uso de tecnología tiene un enfoque positivo.
I consider that the plan for technology use has a positive focus.
En este plan hay muchas áreas que recaen directamente en los padres.
And in this plan, there are quite a few areas that fall on the parents.
Yo les pediría que se hiciera un estudio sobre el conocimiento de tecnología que los padres tienen para saber cuál es su nivel de manejo de la tecnología.
In order to really know how comfortable parents feel using technology, I would ask that you have some kind of study on what parents really know about technology and how to use it.
Hay muchos padres que no están familiarizados con el Parents Square.
There's a lot of parents that aren't even familiar with Parent Square.
Entonces tendríamos que identificar a estos grupos y ofrecer talleres educativos donde podamos aprender estas cosas básicas, como por ejemplo habilitar o deshabilitar accesos a materiales y aplicaciones.
So we would need to identify the groups of parents that are not familiar with technology and then be able to offer workshops, educational workshops, so that parents can learn about basic things, like, for example, enabling or disabling access to materials or applications.
Un buen lugar para empezar podría ser trabajar con las organizaciones como la de Partners in Education, donde hace 10 años aprendí cómo monitorear el contenido que mis hijos tenían acceso.
A good place to start could be considering perhaps working with organizations like Partners in Education, where I, 10 years ago, learned how to monitor the content that my son was having access to.
Esto me educó sobre la seguridad y el uso de tecnología en casa.
This provided education to me as a parent on the use of technology and safety at home.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment on the item.
All right, so the Superintendent Maldonado, do you have a comment?
Board members, and thank you to the parents who spoke. I do want to ask Mr. Cooper, we are aware of the issues that were brought up by our parent, Ms. Bjork. I hope I'm saying it correctly, Ali. Could you please tell us what we have done since we learned of this issue from our parent?
Yes. Since we learned from this issue of the parent, we have increased the strength of the safe search results that are coming up on our iPads that we're relying on Google Safe Search for, and increased that to keyword blockage. So using resources from filtering companies and internet safety companies, generating large lists of those key terms that need to be blocked and blocking those. A rapid response and critical response to those tickets is our best defense in the customer service layer that we are committed to.
All right, that will bring us to board questions and comments and discussion.
I have several. Thank you. I have several questions, so we might have to alternate back and forth.
Okay.
So thank you for that update. Actually, my first question is for a student board member, Victoria Martinez Peñaranda. I did hear, and that was really great, that we are now going to get student feedback, and specifically on tech. So I know that we don't regularly meet as an intentional tech use committee. That is terminated. How do we integrate this feedback from students? Like, where is it going to be collected, and how does it enter? Is it going to be reported to the board? I'd like to hear more about that.
Yes, absolutely. We had a wonderful start and a couple meetings this summer with board member Victoria and Ed Zucchelli, our communications officer. As first steps, we have created flyers with QR codes and forms to offer students opportunities to get on mailing lists, and those forms also have feedback areas as well. So we'll be collecting that data. As that data pertains to our Tech with Intent, we're also giving them opportunity with the AI task force, as I mentioned. We'll collect that feedback and we'll be able to present it in these and build it into these reports and at the reporting out that we do at those meetings.
So this is specifically, we are going to get feedback between the 14th and the 10th of September, and we'll get the student feedback. So I think that is a really, sorry. So it sounds like this feedback will be brought to us as part of the data you gather between September 14th and the 25th, and it will be brought back to us. So I think the student voice is really important.
I agree.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that it would be acknowledged and that we would hear it. And so that's one question. My question is about the digital citizenship courses. I'm happy to hear that the elementary schools did something during the first week. I guess I'd have to say I'm wondering why we didn't start off the school year in junior high and senior high with digital citizenship. Is there a reason why we weren't able to put that in place in the homerooms? Because it seems like it's extremely important to start off with education.
Absolutely, and those digital citizenship lessons are prioritized to be getting done as soon as possible. When we met with our leader at the Leadership Institute with our principals, we emphasized the priority of doing those as early as possible, and we worked with them on setting up what the logistics and schedule of that would look like, and we have those plans going forward. But for those particular grades and the way that their schedules work, it was not going to be a day one execution of that.
Can we expect it to happen very soon?
Absolutely. I believe the junior highs are scheduled for their first minimum day is their launch of their digital citizenship. And then we will have a similar priority with our high schools. And like I mentioned, that scheduling meeting happens tomorrow.
I'm glad to hear that. Did our staff, did they receive digital citizenship lessons specifically on the risks of AI?
I would have to double check, especially the high school framework or the lessons delivered, to see if those include AI. As far as that framework goes, it was geared towards things like digital footprint and reputation, being safe online with your searches, and then cyberbullying are some of the topics that are the broad topics are discussed. I can't tell you off the top of my head if there's specific AI in there.
May I ask
Please.
Dr. Becchio to confirm the mandated training we have for staff does include something on tech safety? I'm not sure if it's exactly to your exact topic, but I want to see what we've done around that.
Yeah, I'm
topic.
curious.
Thank you.
Oh, your question was about staff receiving training, not the staff, not the training that the staff is delivering to students.
Because it really isn't just, I mean, everybody needs to know the possible pitfalls and issues involved in tech.
Yes, sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Okay.
So yes, there are two layers of that. One of the things that we did is Mr. Benz and I ourselves delivered some AI training as far as not only safety, but like legality around the AI tools that we use, which tools we believe we should encourage our staff to use versus tools that we are asking them to stay away from. And yes, in addition to that, there are trainings on our new Vector platform, which is what we're using for our staff training that all staff have to go to, and those do include AI as well in part of the cybersecurity sections.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
Do I want to take a break and you can ask questions?
I can ask a question, then we can go. Thank you very much for that presentation. And I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for all your work over the summer. I know it was a huge amount of effort and we've made great progress. At the same time, as a board member and as a parent, it is galling to get an email like this from Ms. Berkey. And in the first week of school. And I understand we're constantly technology is constantly changing. My question is, how do we take preventative actions? Because it seems like much of our strategy for intentional tech has come through pressure from parents and Goleta parents from tech reform. And I appreciate that you responded quickly to a ticket, but I'm curious, how do we, going forward, have the internal capacity to make sure that our iPads are safe?
Right. So the context of that is absolutely true. We act very rapidly and we prioritize things when we are under pressure. The way that we would like to look at that pressure is providing great customer service, especially when we are finding that we have customers that are not satisfied. For many of us, and some of us in this room, we've been going through this journey since 2023 when I started. And when we talk about the preventative measures that this district has done and what has gotten us to this point, which admittedly is not perfect and will never be perfect, has grown by leaps and bounds. When, back in 2023, when I started as director and Steve was interim CTO because of staff changeover, we inherited a multitude of projects coming over COVID, E-rate projects that had been interrupted and left undone, a device procurement and refresh plan that was in shambles. But the number one priority, I remember on my first day, Steve and I sitting down, was form this tech use committee, address the concerns that are happening, and make a strategic plan so that we can get our devices to be safer, to get our internet more secure, and provide a better experience for our students and for our families. At that time, some of you remember, coming out of COVID, we had open networks to try to facilitate rapid tech use. We had no content filtering, and we're just relying on our firewall and device management. We had no teacher tools or parent tools in place to monitor our devices then. So as we are moving through that roadmap or that timeline, and you're talking about like that pressure that has come on, yes, absolutely. And we have been working in step with that group for the past 3 years, and we continue to make those leaps and bounds, and we continue to evaluate our tools and try to get better and better. So yes, we say like there has definitely been some pressure on the department to move faster, but we take it as a point of pride that we have been able to continue to meet those goals, and we continue to evolve and improve and provide the best customer service we can. Please.
So it's critical. Our student safety is of utmost importance, right? As well as we know that within this room, as well as in our department, we have our own kids on the campuses. So what you're asking about is a multi-prong approach. So it's not just simply putting filters into place. One of the things, that's why we were moving quickly with Lightspeed in particular, because we know that has much better controls for parents to actually, if a device goes off campus, they'll be able to use that particular device, or it's user-friendly. That's what we're seeing in terms of this particular platform. So we're looking at it that way, as well as very much making sure that that our students are educated in terms of how to use their devices and use them in a manner that's for education. But the other part is, like, again, it's the one other thing I just want to circle back to. We had talked earlier about Jamf, about using Jamf as a tool to turn the device off as part of parent choice, specifically with the job law language. We're working with that, and Rob had mentioned that right now. So we're actually doing like a 1-2 approach that's immediate. The first one is that the team is working with Jamf, and they're actually developing that part much quicker than even the Lightspeed process of bringing that on board. So with these various moves, we're trying to make sure that we're securing it not only with that approach in terms of with the line-wise security filter, but also with these various ways of approaching the devices and how to make them safe when they're off site. So.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that's been done and, by both of you, by your department and such, and in the short time frame that it's been done. I certainly, think that the feedback from students and family has been helpful. I wanted to comment on, assessing how the parents' familiarity with the devices and what can be done to improve that, such as, the mention of like parents, I think it's parents as partners in education or such, partners in ed, to make sure that all of our parents have access to that information. So thank you. I think that it's something that we're all learning along this route. I mean, really from June, July till right now, which is barely, the middle of August, is how much has happened. And I know that, that we can go further on that. Can you tell me more about is it JAMP, how to turn the device off for the parents? Is it JAMP?
JAMF.
Oh, okay.
Yes, there is. JAMF is our management system. So in IT, we have our big dashboard where we control everything on the device, what it can download, what it can't, the different restrictions. But there are other versions of JAMF as well. There's JAMF Teacher, which the teachers use in their classroom to set up their scope of which apps the students have available to them at any given time. And then we have JAMF Parent. Interesting, going back to thinking about where we started, JAMF Parent had just been launched, and Santa Barbara Unified was instrumental in helping them develop that app. But what that can do for parents is they have at the top level, they have a very simple off button. Devices need to be done, they can flip a switch and the device is not acceptable or accessible. The other thing they can do is set timers. So they can have a rule that says, okay, every day at 9 p.m. the device turns off. A lot of our parents will utilize something simple like that. In addition, if they feel the student needs to use the device and but they don't want the other distractions that come along, and they know, okay, my student is using the Canvas Learning Management System, Google Docs, and a calculator. They can click those 3 apps, and then those are the only apps available for the student on the iPad. The other ones literally disappear from the screen. So that's the control we have with JAMF.
That's helpful, because my concern is also, students being able to work on their schoolwork and what they need.
Right.
But not the other, so thank you.
Exactly, and that will be part of that work that we're doing with specifically our junior high schools when we're talking about that choice of a different configuration when it goes home. That alignment with the junior high teachers and leadership is going to be crucial, because we need to know from them, what are your homework policies? What are the things that a student actually truly needs to get their work done and be successful? And then we can remove anything else that might be distracting there. If it's all right, I'd also like to address your other comment about family engagement. That is something that we are working on as well as part of our initiatives, are working with families, specifically our family engagement liaisons. I personally provided a training for all of our FELs during the summer on our Tech with Intent initiative, making them very aware of the different changes and what to expect, giving them some frequently asked questions that might come up for families, and making sure that everyone knows on the school site websites where we have provided instructions and supports for parents.
Great, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Before we go back around, I want to make sure our student trustee has an opportunity.
Question. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you so much for your team and all of the hard work that you guys are putting into this. I just had a question about what the AI, because in the presentation under safety and governance, one of the things that is going to be worked on is AI use monitoring, and I was just kind of curious, and I wanted to know what that would look like for, like, how is that going to be monitored on student devices, and how, yeah, I was just curious, because I recently had a student reach out about that, and they were also, well, I guess that's a little different, but a student did reach out about how it looks for their administrators and their educators too. As we know, administrators are role models, and they were just concerned about what, I'm just curious. I just want to know more about what the AI use monitoring looks like.
Certainly. So on content filter monitoring pages, they have the content filter, and then they have a student safety monitoring dashboard where students who have high levels of what are classified as dangerous searches, which could be due to substance abuse, violence, suicide, those kinds of things, will be flagged, and there are reports that then can be sent out to interested parties to alert them like that. A similar dashboard is what Lightspeed is showing us, that would just monitor that AI use. And instead of flagging, those students with dangerous searches, it would be flagging different sites that are coming up as being very popular or hit at different times to give us insight to evaluate, oh, is that an approved tool? Is that someplace safe that students could go? And then we could take action on that.
Oh, like ChatGPT or like Gemini? Is that what you're referring
Those
to?
those
Okay.
would come up, but as we're finding more and more AI platforms and chatbots and things are popping up all over the place. So some things that maybe we've never even heard of might become popular with students because they find out it's not blocked. It would give us that information to be able to respond.
And then, so I know that there's like some limits on what that looks like at the traditional schools. I don't know if it's different at each campus. I remember when I was at San Marcos, there was like a no AI policy and all that. But what does that look like? Is there like rules for administrators? Because I had a student reach out about that, and they were saying that their like principal used it, and I just want to know if what the information they're getting is like. Are there like restrictions for them? I just was curious.
Thank you for asking. Indeed, they are. Yes, we are pointing our staff towards Google Gemini. Google Gemini is included in our Google Workspace for Education, and it is a core platform that explicitly does not train on the data or information that our staff puts into it because of our paid level of service there. And then we are giving governance as well about things that may be dangerous through leadership memos and posts about things like AI note takers in meetings and things that are not vetted and approved, and avoiding use on tools such as that.
Okay, thank you so much.
We'll go back around to other questions. Trustee Beal?
So I feel that at this point, I guess what I'm wanting to have is clarification of expectation. So way back at the turn of the century, things were apps. They were separate, right? Now apps are based, you access them through browsers, and their information is saved on the cloud. So there's an interconnectedness, right? And you're using browsers. And for me, that is the entry point for all of this need to filter and things getting through and not going through. Like, I remember when the children were young, they would actually go to an app. It wouldn't connect them to anything else. All their personal information was saved in the app. And maybe on the admin side of the app, they would have all the students who are logged in, but it wasn't something that you accessed through a web browser. It was like a standalone thing, and maybe some sort of internal communication to have data go back and forth. Like the data was uploaded, downloaded, uploaded, downloaded. Now we have these browsers, and it seems to me this is the issue, that you're never, ever, it feels like you're never, ever going to win the game of filtering everything as we have more creativity, even in the form of the AI being used to scam people, to mask themselves, to like, oh, this looks like an innocuous search, but I'm going to show you this picture anyway. So with the comments that we're hearing from our public commenters, I guess the question is what is our expectation of our students and our parents? Because it seems like we can put in all these sort of monitors and red flags and filters. These things will maybe block some stuff. These things will maybe flag something after it's been seen. So there's never going to be a 100% block, right? The only 100% block is to never use it, right? So that is a complicated thing. Like, how do you go from never using it to using it in a way that is not harmful? Is the expectation that if we really want our students to not be harmed by use of internet, like, you know, our curriculum, you know, whatever is being asked of them, is that a parent really needs to be watching them if they have the device at home? I mean, I'm understanding that passing periods and stuff is an area of opportunity, and I'm hearing that we need to be really absolutely, you know, we really have to lock that down, because that's an opportunity for students to see things they probably shouldn't be exposed to. But is that going to be the expectation? It seems like it is, that, you know, we're in this technological world, and that if we really want to protect our students against everything, somebody has to always be in the room, because there's going to be all these creative ways for people to get around the filters and the content blockers. I just wonder if that's our reality.
That's the question for our time. I can do an answer unless you had.
I mean, is
There you go.
Lightspeed, I mean, I'm glad that we're getting better at like these things, and I would love to hear that Lightspeed, if it's being used by LA Unified and being used by Santa Barbara Unified, and they flag a website, they don't just flag it for LA Unified, they flag it for every school that's on Lightspeed. That would be a great collaboration, right? Like, that would be wonderful. But again, this is all just like, this gets to a student. So our messaging, and this really comes to our messaging about education and our parents. What are we offering them? What are we telling them? You know, what would your message be? It isn't that here's the iPad for your child, you can take it home. You can expect that nothing is going to get through. I don't know we're at that, especially because we do not have the cooperation of any of these major web browsers in helping us with this. So I just think it's important. And so what is your expectation, that we can get 99%, or I just think we have to have an honest conversation about this. Yeah.
Okay. So we are an educational institution. So like you said, and many have said, filtering and chasing down things is not going to be the answer. The answer is education, as in all things. Educating our students about responsible use, about self-monitoring, about the dangers that are out there. Educating our teachers about the importance of guiding our students, setting examples, and being explicit about the skills necessary to navigate a digital world, and partnering with the resources we have to educate our parents on on navigating through this digital world. It is more uncertain than ever. We're seeing what AI can do, as you mentioned, just being embedded in everything. But again, none of us would be here if we didn't think education was the fundamentally most important thing that we could do for our families and our students.
Trustee Caffrey?
Thank you. So, Mr. Cooper, I hear that we have come a long way from having no filters when we first handed out iPads. And I remember Dr. Kristen Hughes was really instrumental in higher safety for iPads. But that was a huge grassroots effort. And I just am wondering, again, about reactive versus proactive. What kind of way is it to make our iPads safe based on parent and community watchdogs? To me, that doesn't sound like customer service. My question is, how do we realize when we're handing out iPads to all of our students that they need filters? How do we have the internal capacity to know, to be on the forefront instead of hearing from parents that the iPads are unsafe? So it's a similar way of asking my previous question, but yeah.
Right. I can assure you that our department follows best practices that align and are on par or above other school districts, not only in our immediate area, but across the state. I think that you are correct. There is always work to do. And we do our very best to continue our professional connections that we have with other school districts, that we are watching and engaging with the vendors that we do have, especially around student safety and filtering, and using those networks and using those best practices and letting those best practices guide the projects and how we do them are the best way that we can continue to be on the forefront of what is up and coming and the changes that we need to make. Please.
I would like to just give an example of the proactiveness. So before we had the pressure from parents with changes on the devices, one of the things that we took on in particular was working with LineWise with their on filter. We went to them very much like we talked to Lightspeed multiple times, and what's happened is these companies change with the work, the proactive work with LA Unified and Chicago Public Schools, with Lightspeed, and that's where they are. They'd never had these things that we're talking about today unless they had that work. We did the same with Coria, that on-device app. That was just a pilot. And we said, yes, we need to take this on, and we know that we need to have the on-device filter right away. That's why we were able to pivot when we realized that there was an issue, and we were able to move faster with getting the on-device filter on our devices as we were moving forward. So we were like, well, let's put it on. We just got to move forward, and we just can't wait to see if it's going to break something. Let's move. So, but that was a proactive action that we had taken, or the team had taken. The what? Yeah,
Trustee Munoz.
The grant.
Yeah, just a brief comment about also the input from our students. You know, we have a student board member. We have access to students who are interested in this topic. You know, we're talking about it right now, and students can be, you know, looking at what we can do to keep their peers better. The communication, I think, is the key. You know, the importance of mental health and such, and being open to their feedback, for them to tell us, hey, you know, you guys better watch it with this iPad. This is what is available to my, you know, to the kids in junior high or to my siblings and such. So I think that just continuing to communicate on this topic is of importance.
Trustee Caffrey, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. So I really
We'll come
have
back.
a question about putting the onus on parents and on students. So basically, my question is, I too agree about the value and the power of education. At the same time, I know we've heard a million times from the Balanced Literacy Task Force, Jonathan Haidt says, right, the real world is safer than it's ever been, but online, that is where kids these days really encounter dangerous situations and exposure to inappropriate content. So basically, my concern is that we're putting the onus on parents to ensure that their students are using the iPads correctly. And I'm wondering, can you explain to me a bit, is there an alternative? Is there a different way to provide content, educational content to students that allows them to do their work without a parent having to police their iPad? And especially, I think it's just not fair to make parents police iPads, because different parents have different time capacities. I mean, all of us with young children, I have young children, we all spend a lot of time ensuring or that our children use technology for a reasonable amount of time. But different parents have different availability to ensure that their student is using an iPad correctly. We heard from Ms. Oseguera in her public comment that parents have different technological capacity. And so my concern is our most marginalized students will have the least controls over content on their iPads. So my question is, do we have alternatives to handing out iPads to every student saying, we just can't keep up with the arms race? So it's on you to make sure that your child is using this appropriately. What else could we do?
So first and foremost, part of the evaluation of the new tools that we're doing, whether it be Lightspeed or Securely or a LineWise or a number of different projects we're looking at, one of the things that is on our rubric for evaluating is the ease of use of those parent tools. So is there a way to deliver content to students that is not on a device? Of course, that will take a lot of alignment and coordination with our curriculum teams, with our ed services teams, with the homework policies at the schools themselves and what their expectations is. And does that shift in this, as the 2020s move to the 2030s, what does that look like? But for now, as devices are going home so that students can do the work that is assigned to them, we are evaluating and looking for the very best and easiest parent-friendly control tools we can find.
Trustee Beal.
So I think that really is the question, is at a certain grade level, I mean, we're already at elementary, the students are not taking the iPads home, so no monitoring from the parents, unless for some reason an iPad is provided for special needs or whatever, right, if there's things that have to be done at home, and I imagine that's very well monitored. But is the junior high level, do we see that if this is so difficult without the cooperation of these big organizations that allow this content to come through, do we have to think about telling our teaching staff that you can do, because you're monitoring interactive activities that are educational, but then what goes home is not with an iPad, that it's iPad free, right? Is that something we have to consider if we cannot control the situation? We're trying, right? The things are, as you said, it's a moving target every day practically. So that would be something that we would have to consider and talk about. And I think, as one of our public commentators said, if we give the choice of taking an iPad home, I think we do have to have something educational in place that says, yes, sign this contract, do this learning about turning the controls on and off, everything you need to do to make this a safe iPad, whether you use community partners to provide that teaching. I mean, obviously that's not in place now, but it is something we have to consider, that if we are going to have a policy where students have to or need to or want to take their iPads home, there has to be a different level of education. There has to be family education. That's just mandatory. It's just an agreement with taking the iPad home. So it's a lot of stuff, and I know we're trying to do it quickly.
I just want to go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to recognize this is our first update from a resolution that was passed in June. Yeah. The teachers are now back. They still have to go through this whole, our education services department still needs to work with teachers. Our teachers already told us in our SBTA survey that they also wanted to see a reduction in the use of technology. So these are really great questions, but I want to recognize that we're a little bit ahead of the implementation. And I want to give Mr. Cooper a thank you and a break from trying to predict the future while we think you may be able to. I just want to kind of bring us back to, these are all being worked out, great questions, board members, but we don't have teachers in front of us yet to give more input as well as the students. So I'd like to maybe ask that we take these questions from you and think about them and pose them to our our principals and our teachers as we continue to engage and bring you more updates for this resolution.
And that's why I'm asking the questions. This is our public forum, and really, for me, it's like, what is the end result? What are we aiming for? If we're aiming for 100% safety, we're going to take a very different approach as a school district. If we're like, we have to have an acceptable amount of risk, and these are the safeguards we can put in place, and we think they're good enough, then we are going to do this. And that's the nature of the public discussion about this.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna roll things over to comments that actually might look a little bit more like dialogue among the board members. So maybe you could take a breath for a moment. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the energy and the efforts around this. I have been involved with teaching instruction for computer technology since 1989, when I was teaching students basic program on Apple IIe's, right? And I have been everything from the most advocate proponent of getting every piece of technology into kids' hands, make sure that every child has their own device, to having questions about, was that too much? Was it too fast? Have we missed things? To saying, the reason I chose not to continue on into an ed tech field as a master or whatever is that I decided I would rather be an administrator and help with this portion of it and trying to figure out what works the best. I want to put a perspective here about what education does, and one comment for me. I can imagine a situation, first of all, what we've heard is zero filtering long time ago, that's all better, to the other extreme of we just can't let kids have these, to everything that's in between it. And one of the things that we haven't mentioned at this table is the value of sending it in the status that it is currently. When you compare to what would happen if you said no to technology, when in most homes, even those with students in low socioeconomic situations, there are ways to reach the worst parts of the internet with devices that will be there without any controls or any filtering or any attempt to block it. A child sharing a cell phone, taking an iPad from a parent, going to visit a friend, using unfiltered Wi-Fi that is at home. So one of the things I want us to be careful about, and I agree with everything here, this disturbs me to no end to see these pictures. But I also understand the enormous hurdle of getting it, so that's absolutely impossible. But if it's 99 or 98%, are we in a better place than just saying we can't do anything with it? We're only going to send home devices with an app on it that they can do that isn't even with the internet. Don't we provide a better service by providing filtered devices and things that have some level of control, along with education to teachers, to parents, to students about what's appropriate? So I just wanted to put out there that I think that one of the reactionary responses to too much technology and risky searching is, then let's make it less risky, and let's teach, and let's do the kind of things that education does. Let's acknowledge that we will never be perfect. But I can tell you the story of when I opened a junior high school's locker when I was a principal, and there were 57 Playboy magazines in there that were being sold to anybody that walked by. This kind of thing happens. It's completely ubiquitous and ridiculously different now. I don't mean to compare that, but children will also, at all ages, take restrictions and say, ooh, must be bad. How can I get around it? I don't know. I really appreciate this dialogue because it's absolutely critical. I don't know that we'll ever have the answers, but I think together we can get closer. That's what I have to say. Okay. Who's ready? And we'll go. Okay. We'll go in order.
So I'm going to best you on that, Bill, because in 1982, Apple provided those little computers so we could all learn how to program to my high school for free. And so that was super fun, right? But I was also part of a generation of free-range kids, so we really did a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a nice balance there. And what I've been struggling with is we provide a public education for our students, a free education. And the question is always, are we preparing our students for the world? And certainly there's age-appropriate education. And so we are wrestling with this question from elementary all the way to high school.
Yeah.
And our CTE programs, our academies, they want to use this technology. So I think that when I get feedback from parents, I'm always really asking myself, what is their expectation of the public school system? Does it make sense in the system we have to satisfy their desire for not to do this or to do this, right? And certainly in private schools, they will cater for a hefty price tag to give exactly the education you're asking for. And we don't have that luxury. That doesn't mean that we can't be responsible, that we can't be safe. But I do think that we aren't going to say to our high school parents, your students are not going to be faced with technology. But I do think that we have to focus on the safety and education. I know we're doing that, and that's what we can do. So these are big questions. I ask them not expecting you to answer, but I ask them because it is part of the public discussion. What are we trying to do? How safe can we make things? And, that are we absolutely doing the best that we can do with what we have? That's my comment.
Okay. Trustee Caffrey, we're going to go around and student trustee and then Munoz.
I have two quick comments. So first, I think that there's a difference between students having access to devices at home and iPads sent home from school, which are required for work. Because basically I think for many parents, they assume that if an iPad is being sent home from school, that it is a safe device. Mm-hmm. And so that if it is true that we cannot provide perfect safety, I think before we hand out an iPad to any student, that basically we need to have a way for the parent, and not just a contract that they're signing, but have a way for parents to know exactly how they need to monitor those devices. So basically, we're sending iPads home, and I think there's an assumption of safety. That would be as a parent, that's your perspective. So if they are not totally safe, then how do you ensure that parents know that they need to monitor them? But then I think there's a much broader question, which we've talked about a lot in the balanced task force, which is, and this isn't reactionary against technology, there's just so much research at this point that the utility of ed tech is low. There's so few pieces of ed tech that are actually helpful. And so my question is really, I understand we made a huge investment in one-to-one iPads to enable school to go on during COVID. And we financed that using COVID funds. But we don't have COVID funds anymore, and we have a multi-year deficit. What is the cost benefit of having one-to-one iPads? If we can't keep them safe for students, and they are extraordinarily expensive. So I think we need to have a deeper question, a deeper conversation about our tech program and how we provide education to students. And I'm not saying, there's something called the Tech Triangle, which I think is super helpful. And the Tech Triangle basically has tech delineated. So there's tech that is transformative, that is used for very specific things like GarageBand or, math or physics, like tech that makes a real difference in how you can do work. Then there's tech that is distracting. Basically there are layers of tech, and there's tech of differing usefulness. And I think especially with so many colleges and universities, they're moving back towards paper and having students do essays and math and everything on paper, because part of education is the intellectual struggle. So basically, I think we need to think more deeply about, do we even want these one-to-one iPads? When do we need technology? And I 100%, I would love to fund computers for coding classes, but that doesn't mean every single child in the district gets an iPad. It means that we are much more selective about our spending on tech, and we basically spend only when it really matters, and then we also don't need to manage. I think we have, obviously we have not only iPads for every student, but a large additional supply. It's like 20,000 iPads that we have to manage. That's a huge amount of work. So how do we make this, the amount of tech that we need to manage, much more manageable? That's the deeper question I have.
Thanks. Our student trustee,
Yeah,
Victoria.
well, thank you so much, everyone, for putting so much time into this. I know I've been, working with Mr. Cooper on trying to incorporate more students and involve more students in the AI task force. I just wanted to, maybe provide some student input and maybe share a little bit of my experiences. I've been in the district since La Colina since 7th grade, and I've seen a huge improvement with content filters, and there is so much work in progress that has been done, and I really want to highlight that because I want to highlight that. So I have seen lots of improvements with content filters and all of that. I do want to say that, this is, I've seen the public comments, this is obviously really disheartening to see, but students, I think, will be exposed to so many things outside of their devices too, and just growing up, I think in any community, you're going to be exposed to so many things, so I just wanted to say that, and that technology is a part of our future. Universities are offering degrees in AI now, and so I know hundreds of students in our district that do rely on their devices every single day. I'm one of the students who I spend, of course, hours on my device, but it's all for schoolwork. I'm studying. I think all perspectives are really valuable, but I'm one of the students, and all of my peers that I know are studying so hard for all of their classes, and their device is a huge, incredible resource that I'm so grateful that students have access to devices in our district. I think it's a privilege to have a device that you can take home and study, and I'm also just all the resources that we have in our district, but I do want to highlight that district devices are an incredible tool that we're provided with, and I know that students across our district rely on it every single day, in school, outside of school, emails. We're seniors, juniors, they're like mini adults now. They are doing so many things on their devices. So thank you for the work, and I just wanted to say that. So thank you. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to ask that we wrap it up with any final brief comments, and let's see. So we're going to come around to Rose, and then let's just try to think about tying a bow on it here.
Yes, yeah, for myself, bring it to the perspective of myself as a board member, and the equity with the students that I represent with the community, is that I feel that, that we have the iPads as a district. And so in terms of providing them to students, I think we should continue to provide to them these devices and use them as age appropriate, with filters and stuff, and not take them away, to protect them. I think that, as our student board member is saying, it has such an impact on education, on mature use as they're, junior high preparing for high school, and then of course in high school preparing for college. Many of our high school students are dual enrolled, as we talked about a month ago when Victoria and I met and such. And so I do think that, we keep on working. We've come across, like I said, like a huge improvement from a couple months ago, really. And so I'm glad to have this discussion, and I really feel that, that our students are entitled to the devices that we have, and that we also provide resources for the parents in terms of their use.
Trustee Beal.
So I really appreciate the comments made by our student board member, Victoria Martinez Peñaranda. I feel that this is really the big question. So we have our middle school students. This is always the big question. This is that transition from elementary to high school. And so my comment is that we focus. And when we talk about being reactive versus proactive, for me, part of being proactive is saying, this is what we're going to do. And just putting that out there and saying, this is how we're going to do it. And so for me, you know, I know it's been an enormous amount of work because I've sent an enormous amount of emails to you and have been trying to do research, and this summer just went by reading articles, reading books, reading that. There's just so much information and it changes. Focusing on that middle school, because I think that is the point where we have our students learning to use technology and wanting to use it. That is their future. I think it was my future, it is their future, and it is a bigger part of their future than it was of my future. I use a lot of it now. I'm still doing, you know, I'm still working. So focusing on that, and I know that Board Member Caffrey talked about a lot of ed tech being maybe not as good as it could be, but you did use the word transformative. And there is technology out there that is really, really excellent, and doing the work to figure out what that is. And then we're not having parents really, we could call it an agreement, we can call it a contract, we can call it whatever it is. My point with having them sign something is it's really more like a checklist where they are getting the education so that when we hand them something, they are well informed, right? Just like when you go to a doctor's office and you consent to a procedure. You're not going to do something to somebody without them being well informed. And I think it's for us an opportunity to educate our parents and make sure we're doing it so that harm doesn't come to their students. And it is our responsibility to do that. So that's my comment.
Trustee Caffrey.
So I would love to be a part of writing the board policy related to tech. And so I'm curious, you know, I have been a part of this process for my entire time on the board, so has Trustee Beal. I don't know if she's interested, but Trustee Banning and I recently watched a webinar from CSBA on policy and the board's role, and as the local policymakers, I would love to be involved on the team. So I'm curious, can I follow up with that afterwards, or how would that work?
I don't believe that this is the time to talk about who's on committees for policy at this point. Obviously,
for this specific policy, I'd like to work on it.
This is an update. It wasn't on the agenda as a policy discussion. All I'm saying is we will have an opportunity as a board to define and form and mold the policy to what we want it to be. And it's not the time to decide who's going to do that or what committee it would be.
Yeah, I'm not asking to be on the committee, but basically when I saw the timeline for policy, it basically said that you would bring the policy to us. And what I'm asking is to be part of the writing process, which, so I don't know if we need to take
I'm not sure where we are with that. Typically policy comes to us. I think that's a separate conversation. We have time for it.
Okay.
Victoria, any final comments from you?
Just thank you so much for all of the work that's going into this and gathering. I think again, just listening to student input and surveys, really to students, to district-wide surveys are always a good idea. There's been students already thinking about that and how that would look like in the Student Advisory Council too, and just thinking about that. But thank you so much for everything.
I will wrap up with a few comments. I want to say that we have the responsibility as a board, as a district, to expect the highest degree possible of appropriate filtering and restriction on these devices. We have the responsibility to decide what and how much technology we offer at what grade level and to what students, and we have the responsibility to understand the cost benefit of pixels versus paper, textbooks versus digital technology, and we have the responsibility to understand how much money we're spending on what types of things, and to try together as a board, as a district, to balance that and make measured and informed decisions. Tonight's conversation is the continuation of ongoing conversations like this. And although, as I've said, I'm disappointed to see why the pictures that we're still looking at, I appreciate that we got the chance to see that. But I also want to say thank you, because this is difficult work. And I think one of the questions that we need to understand is, how do we determine when we have the solution that is as effective as it can be? When do we know that we've got things locked down and we can stop expecting that there's a back door that somebody will find and say, oops, here we go, and that we are doing fast speed customer service to correct something that we thought wasn't possible? These are all the things that we aren't going to answer tonight, and I don't think we're going to answer it with policy. We're going to continue to answer it with discussions about how technology is most beneficially used for students in our district at every grade level, and I appreciate that we're on that pathway now. It's a long and winding digital road, I think. We will, I think we're going to come up to another topic here that could take a bit. We're going to take a 10-minute break and then be back. Bring everybody back to the table and move it on to the next item. I'm going to recognize that we have two items. One is an approval item, action item that we're going to move up because there are public comments from people that are here for that. So we're going to move that up, and then the enrollment will come next. There is one public comment, but that's a virtual one. So we're going to recognize the people that are here in the room and change that order in the agenda. So with that said, So this is what is item H1, moved ahead. Approval of the district responses to the 25-26 Santa Barbara Grand Jury reports, Brown Act, bullying, gang, school shootings, and authorization for the superintendent to sign and transmit responses to the presiding judge and grand jury foreperson. Superintendent Maldonado, do you want to introduce this, please?
Thank you. This item is a report from the grand jury that comes to all of us as Santa Barbara County superintendents, and it encompasses their findings from interviews with staff and others across the Santa Barbara County area. I have asked Ms. Joanna Powell to compile the information from many of our experts in these different topics, and she will now present to you our proposed responses.
Thank you, Dr. Maldonado. So yes, as you both just said, this item asks the board to approve the district's draft responses. As the memo describes, and as Dr. Maldonado just said, the civil grand jury examines the operations of local government in school, including school districts, and names the agencies required to respond to its findings and recommendations. This cycle, there are 4 reports from 25-26 that named our districts, and they're the ones that Dr. Maldonado just listed. Across those 4 reports, we are responding to 17 findings and 29 recommendations, and there's a format that is mandated by state law where we, in terms of how we're required to respond to the findings, we agree or disagree, and then the responses, for the most part, will be implemented or have been implemented or won't be implemented with an explanation. So in terms of the process here, my office oversaw interviews of the department heads. So after we received the response, the reports, we oversaw interviews of department heads responsible for each subject area and the additional staff that they identified. We built the responses from those interviews and supporting records, and then sent them around to the cabinet members who reviewed the drafts in their areas and confirmed their accuracy and completeness. Earlier this evening in closed session, the board reviewed reviewed and provided direction on those portions of the responses that warranted confidential legal review. And just flagging for everybody who's here, the draft responses are now available on Diligent and in the back of the room. I can speak to and sort of have spoken to the response process and legal framework. I'm not the subject matter expert on the programs and operations, so for questions about what we're currently doing in the areas, I'll call up the relevant cabinet member. And one final framing note, the reports touch on topics that connect to bigger conversations, but the responses that we drafted and are discussing tonight are only answering what the jury asked, so we should stick with that in talking about the responses. So we recommend that the board approve the 4 response letters as presented and authorize Dr. Maldonado to sign them.
Thank you for the presentation. We do have 2 public comments on this item.
Yes, we have Mayra Oseguera and Christian Blom. Not sure if
Buenas noches, miembros de la mesa directiva, Superintendente Maldonado. Mi nombre es Mayra Oseguera, padre de 2 estudiantes en este distrito.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Maldonado. My name is Mayra Oseguera. I am a parent of 2 students in this district.
Estamos expuestos a la violencia día con día.
We are exposed to violence every day,
Es más fácil reaccionar que tomar acción.
and it is easier to react to it rather than to take action.
En mi percepción, nadie nace siendo violento. Es algo que se aprende.
I believe that no one is born being violent. It is something that is learned.
Quisiera pedirles que miren a su entorno y se pregunten, ¿qué es lo que estoy transmitiendo?
I would ask all of us to look around our environment and ask yourself, what are we transmitting?
Padres, no me malinterpreten. He tenido 3 estudiantes en este distrito.
And I don't want parents to misinterpret what I say. I've had 3 students in this district,
Y los 3 en algún punto experimentaron violencia por otros estudiantes e incluso por algunos miembros del personal.
and all 3 of my students have at some point experienced violence perpetrated by other students and even by staff members.
¿Qué fue la diferencia para mis hijos?
The thing that made the difference for my kids
Fue la toma de acción.
was that we took action.
Cómo trabajamos juntos con nuestros principales, maestros y administradores.
And we worked together with our principals, teachers, and administrators
Para llegar a un punto donde todos nos sintamos seguros.
so that we could all reach a point where we all felt safe.
Y esto incluye a los agresores también.
And this included the aggressors.
Hay que preguntarnos qué hay detrás de esas reacciones agresivas, explosivas,
And we need to ask ourselves, what is behind those aggressive, explosive reactions?
y cómo podemos proporcionar recursos para ayudar en el autocontrol.
And how can we provide resources to help kids develop self-control?
La violencia no es tolerada de ninguna forma,
Violence should not be tolerated in any way it shows up,
ya sea verbal, emocional, económica o por género, raza, discapacidad física o por hacer una denuncia.
whether it be physical violence, verbal, emotional, economic, based on gender, race, disability, or for speaking up.
Y mucho menos tolerante por individuos que hacen un compromiso para servir.
And even more so, violence should not be tolerated when it's perpetrated against those who make the commitment to serve others.
Todos tenemos una responsabilidad en la prevención o la contribución a la violencia.
And we all have the responsibility to prevent violence.
Pregúntate, padre, estudiante, miembro de la comunidad, ¿de qué lado estás?
I ask all parents, students, and members of the community, what role are you playing in this?
Agradezco al distrito por el esfuerzo de promover la aplicación de hacer las denuncias.
And I appreciate the district's effort in promoting the application, the tool to facilitate the reporting of incidents.
Todos debemos de sentirnos seguros y protegidos cuando salimos de casa.
We should all be able to feel safe and protected when we step outside of our home.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next speaker, Christian? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what I'm about to share touches a little bit on the other technical issues we've been talking about iPads. It is related. I have too much to say, so if I can share the full comments in writing, I have copies, 10 copies for everyone. And I will keep myself to about 3 minutes of abbreviated comments. And I echo what you said. There is no technical solution to the problem of bullying. There's no technology that will solve this. It's a structural problem that goes from the very top of our country to the very bottom. As some of you know, I'm from an indigenous community in Sweden on the border of Norway. So in Sweden, I'm an outsider. Here, I'm an outsider, but because of what I look like, I'm treated as an insider. That gives me a certain perspective on behavior and institutional structures. In my community, for hundreds of years, bullying is completely unheard of. It doesn't exist. It's not tolerated. Why is that? I will explain in a moment. The board also knows my family, or some of you know. We have been through the grievance process more than once. And I'm not here tonight about my children. I'm here about the structure that keeps producing these cases. Over the years, my family's experience prompted me to do some deep research on the nature of bullying. And as I assumed, since I knew that it didn't exist where I lived, it is not a universal human behavior. It is a institutional, structural product. Bullying is dominance behavior, repeated intentional harm aimed at someone that has less power. That's the load-bearing comment here. It's about power. Communities have known how to stop it from happening for most of human history. Anthropologists call this structure reverse dominance structures. We don't have that. We don't have much of that in the United States. But it exists all over the world, and particularly in Scandinavia, but not only in Scandinavia. It exists in countries like Afghanistan, which I'm intimately familiar with. The counterpart to reverse dominance structures is the vertical hierarchy our nation and schools run on. Ranked grades, track classes, constant competition, telling children every day who is sorted beneath them and who is sorted above them.
Mr. Blum, your time is up. I will share that you have sent the full contents of what you wanted us to have via email to the board. I think if we haven't all received it, I'll make sure it gets forwarded. And I assure you we will read it and appreciate your time and taking the opportunity to make your comments tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Should
you.
I leave the printed copies?
You certainly can, absolutely. Thank you very much. So that is the extent of our public comment on this item. So we will open this to board question or comments. Anyone? Oh, okay. I'll make sure, well, the printed copies are here. We'll make sure you get them after the meeting. No.
You requesting to have Joanna's edits, or are you asking for?
Oh, no,
the-
I'm sorry. I was just saying there's a technical difficulty about not getting the email from Mr. Blum. We can work on it after the meeting.
We'll take a look. We'll work afterwards. So we are now at the discussion point on this agenda item. Are there questions or comments from any of our board members or the student trustee? No? Yep. All right, no questions and comments?
Okay.
Let's start with our student trustee. Are you ready, Victoria? Or did you have a comment on this one? Oh, no questions or comments. My apologies. Okay. Trustee Beal, let's start with you.
So I appreciate reading the grand jury findings. I don't think that the grand jury is there to just look at small things. They're looking at big issues. And reading their comments and our response to the comments was interesting, as if anybody has actually read the agenda, they'll see that we have things in place that maybe weren't well understood, and we have responded that there's some things we can change. Mainly, I want to acknowledge that they did bring up some big concepts, and I think personally, as a board member, I'm paying attention, and I would like to look at these things in different ways. That is my responsibility. So I appreciate their work.
Question or comment? Trustee Caffrey, I think you said you had a question. Do you? Either one.
Yes. So my question is, so I also think the grand jury's work was very helpful, and I appreciate the work, and I think it has given us much to think about in the coming months. So thank you to the grand jury. And then I have two quick questions. One is Ms. Oseguera mentioned bullying specifically by adults, and Dr. Vecchio, in a previous conversation, you mentioned something about coaches and the kind of training. No? I thought that you said it was going to be part of. Oh, okay.
I just.
Okay, basically, yes. So my question is basically how coaches, what kind of training coaches get, and the expectation for coaches.
Yes, good evening, Board. My response to that was that all coaches, when onboarded, receive the fundamentals of coaching training that is mandated by CIF, which contains, it contains a lot of different components, but one of them is, ethical coaching, treatment of students, those kind of topics are included in that. Yeah.
And then I had one other just quick question about the response, the bullying response, which it just said, finding 2, disagree partially with an explanation. This is my one question. It says, at the junior high and high school levels, we do have counselors, though notification practices vary by site, and we do not currently have documented consistency of practices across all campuses. Is that something that we could, I know some of these things we say by December we can document a consistent practice. Is that a possibility?
Sorry, I'll answer the second part, and then maybe Marianne can answer the first part. Strangely, in the way that the report was structured, no, we can't say about the implementation, because that was actually a finding, not a recommendation. So for the finding, so if you look at it like that's finding 2, administrators do not consistently inform school counselors, and then they make their recommendations about what to do as a result of that. We have to agree or disagree with the findings, and then it's for the recommendations that we say we'll implement or not. So we actually don't have the option to say will be implemented for that finding too, because it's a finding, not a recommendation. But to your more substantive question, maybe.
So at the junior high and high school levels, we do have counselors who are notified. That notification does vary a little bit just because of the size of the schools between junior high and high school. So absolutely, we can work on our notification processes and make those more consistent as we move into this year.
Thank you. Those were my questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'd like to say that every item on these response documents is in one way or another directly connected to our district board priorities of supportive school environments and family community engagement. As Senora Oseguera commented earlier about working together with the principals and everybody together to solve the problem, that is because there is a sense of belonging and engagement that that we are experiencing and wanting to enhance. I will say that the intent of approving this item tonight is simply to approve the responses to the inquiries, the specific inquiries that were made to findings by the grand jury. It does, as a document, allow us to look at those findings and ask questions about what it is that we are doing and what we might do better. And so that's not in the purview of tonight's discussion, but it's certainly something that we can look toward in the future to taking this document and not only responding to the grand jury, but looking inward because of it and saying, what can we do different and what can we do better? So with that, we've had conversation. Is there a motion?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the district responses to the 25-26 Santa Barbara County Grand Jury reports, and authorization for the superintendent to sign and transmit responses to the presiding judge and grand jury foreperson.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All right, now are you ready for this? Wait for it. Student trustee Martinez Peñaranda, what is your advisory vote?
Aye.
Board
Yes.
members, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously, 4-0. Thank you for allowing us that switch over. We're going to move back to item G2, which is the discussion and direction to staff regarding parameters and requested data for the November 7th, 2026 enrollment study section. Dr. Maldonado, will you introduce this item, please?
As was requested at a prior board meeting, board members, you have asked the staff to put together an enrollment study session, and what the topic of today is to have, after you have reviewed our current policies on enrollment, transfers, and so on, provide us with guidance on what exactly you want us to prepare for that study session, which we have currently scheduled for November 7th.
Yes, we do have a virtual speaker. Do we have them on the line? Okay.
Okay, Roseanne Crawford.
Yes, 3 minutes.
Okay, you should be able to hear me now.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Dr. Maldonado, thank you for putting this item on the agenda. With declining enrollment and the fiscal crisis, it's necessary to have information available to make good decisions. In addition to current enrollment numbers for all schools, the November study session will be a great time to evaluate how to better serve students in terms of boundaries while saving the district transportation dollars with a few boundary changes. At a glance, the current boundary map shows downtown corridors approximately 155 students and 30 special needs students that are bused away from downtown to Monroe and Washington. They are bused an average of 60 minutes both ways. Last fall, Mr. Tedeschi put together a great spreadsheet sharing the bus routes, transportation times, and numbers of students that can be easily updated with the Zoom data. The boundaries of 30 years ago do not best serve our students today. Going forward, could there be a resolution to evaluate boundaries and enrollments every 5 years? Things to ponder. Might La Cuesta students be moved to Santa Barbara City College campus? This would open 710 Santa Barbara Street. For a small neighborhood school, this could serve not only special needs students, the most vulnerable, currently being bused over an hour to and from Monroe and Washington, but others as well within these neighborhood blocks around Santa Barbara Street. This would possibly eliminate busing to both schools and improve the quality of their education while saving district dollars. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So that will lead us to board discussion, questions, comments, and discussion about what data and what parameters we're looking for. Anyone like to start? Trustee Beal, please.
So, having been on the board now for 2.5 years, these our school boundaries and enrollment has come up in many different ways. For me, the most I would say pressing thing that came up was our transfer policy, because there has been a discussion about schools being unbalanced, schools being overcrowded, schools being starved of resources. So from my point of view, I am very interested in looking at how we manage transfers, how that is affecting our schools. And I think a very complex topic is if we were to change the way we allowed students to transfer, how would we change that? How would we calculate it? What would that look like? I mean, I've had some specific thoughts, and this is probably not the place to express them, but really looking at that transfer policy and how it could be changed to better balance our schools and have a healthy atmosphere at all of the schools. Related to that is actually looking at boundaries. I don't think we can have that conversation with looking at school boundaries. And I think there are the elementary school boundaries, and there are some comments and some thoughts on how they haven't been updated in a while. I know that in our board policy, which was provided to us as part of our agenda, it actually says that the board looks at the boundaries every year. And I found that very curious. And obviously we confirm that we like our boundaries every year. We don't actually examine them, right? Nice. So we probably do something. And so, but I do think it would be a healthy practice to come up with some intervals, because maybe there was a very stable population for many years and all of a sudden things are changing. And so we need to be able to change also, again, to serve our schools and our students in a way that is healthy. And so looking at our elementary boundaries, looking at our secondary boundaries, looking at the populations within those boundaries, like would our demographic be, at every school be representative? Would it be a healthy demographic if we just set a boundary, stayed with the boundaries we had? So to me, those are two huge discussions that are related. I'm sure I could add other things, but that seems for me enough, unless somebody brings up something even more interesting.
Other comments, questions? Trustee Caffrey, are you ready?
Yes. Yes, so I really echo Trustee Beal. I think that enrollment and boundaries are inextricably linked. And I don't know if we need to give kind of what kind of information we might like. So like enrollment projection by area, what is the capacity at every school, what is our utilization at every school. And I think that through this work, we can do some really important things. One, ensuring equitable access to programming across our district, fair access to programming. And then also making sure that we really use our facilities in an efficient and effective way. So, and the transportation issue is a key one. I think there's been so much research about the benefits of students walking to school and having short ride times. So the idea that in a community as small as ours, students are riding the bus for more than an hour makes me think we just need to look at transportation in conjunction with enrollment and boundaries. So yeah, I would basically echo Trustee Beal, and those are my main comments.
Trustee Munoz, do you have comments or questions?
Not right now. Thank you.
All right. Student trustee? No? I have a couple of comments on this. This is a pretty important workshop that we're going to be doing in November, and I agree with the need to be looking at these kind of things. I know that it would be interesting to be able to see populated on a map what the enrollment looks like. And I know that there's software that can do that, and it's probably better than when I last saw it, which was probably 10 or 15 years ago, that can really track where kids are. But not only where they are, but I think it would be interesting to know what the changes have looked like. Have declines what have declines looked like in particular areas, and what are areas where people live within certain district areas that are in different schools. These are all the kinds of things that you would need to know if you're readjusting boundaries, or if you're even considering the potential efficiencies of closing or combining schools to make that happen. I think it would be important for us to understand what the birth rate changes have been over time, and what impact we've been seeing on reduction or reversing immigration, and where that's happening in what areas. And finally, I think that it's really important for us to understand not only what the past has brought, but what is the future. What are we expecting to see in built-out areas that are incredibly expensive for people to move into, as opposed to where growth is occurring, and affordable housing and apartments and things like that? And what impact does that have on the way the boundaries would be divided now, with the way it might look in 5 years if there's changes in where people are living? So, once again, I think I'm going to put on my T-shirt with the "Why don't we just" with the slash going through, because this is very complex kind of stuff that we're talking about, and I want to caution us against expecting that by saying we want all this data and then meeting in November, that there are quick solutions to these kind of things without some very targeted ad hoc connections and discussions. So those are my comments. So Rose, and then we'll just go on down the line.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think one of the interests that I would have is the change in enrollment at the schools. Is it, what grades? Are we talking like 5th and 6th grade, so that would affect junior highs going on? Is it at the lower age, lower grade levels? And then also the future of the housing impact, as you said, right next to San Marcos High School, there's going to be many units built very soon. And so will that impact in terms of, San Marcos High School, La Colina Junior High being the closest junior high to that area and such, and how will it impact elementary schools So that would be, I would think, 2 to 4 years' time or so. The first property over on San Marcos Road is coming up just right overnight. I mean, I was away for 2 weeks, and it just, they've moved up and stuff, while the other property, yeah, they're just working on the ground there and so forth. But what are those impacts in the future going to be? And also the immigration, which continues to be an issue in our community, how is that impacting our enrollment?
Trustee Caffrey.
So, Trustee Banning, I definitely hear you that this is a really complex process. And I guess for me, the expectation is not that internally the district produces all of this information. I think that when, especially after 30 years, I think, has it been 30 years since we last looked at our boundaries? What is the,
No.
when did we last look at our boundaries? Does anyone know?
I believe it was right before I arrived, which would be maybe 2018, 19.
Oh, we adjusted boundaries in 2018?
So about 10 years ago, maybe, a little bit, close to that. But before I arrived in 2020.
Okay. Well, so basically, my thought is that this is not, there's specialized firms that help districts with evaluating their boundaries. So I would be curious about kind of best practices, how this is done well, and also incorporating a community engagement piece, engaging stakeholders in this process and getting community input. So basically what I'd love to hear from the district is how does this process work? How does it work well? What are the steps for doing this? And might we need additional expertise in certain areas?
Trustee Beal.
So my understanding is this is a study session. So I'm curious about this gathering of information from the community.
How we might do that in the future.
The question I have is when we're looking at enrollment projections, like I think we're trying to land on some specific data we're going to look at that meeting. Mm-hmm. Does anybody have an opinion on, are we trying to look at 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Does it make sense to even project out for 10 years? I mean, I think you can say, look at elementary enrollment and say what our high schools might look like, maybe. But what time frame are we going to look at? Because we're going to ask for those numbers, so we probably have to tell somebody that. So that is a big question I have. And from my understanding of the study session, this is a public meeting. Community members will be there. I feel like if we're going to get community input, it might be after that meeting. I don't know if we plan to record that meeting and then allow people to watch it and comment if they can't be there. This might be a very important community discussion. If we adjusted our boundaries in 2018, I'd be curious, what did we do exactly? Like, what did we adjust? Because people live in places because they potentially want to go to school in that district. And so I think that adjusting boundaries is complex just for that reason alone, right? So I'd be curious. I mean, if we have to do it, we have to do it, but we need to do it in a way that makes sense and has good data behind it.
So there's a couple of other things that can have impact on this too, and that's the fact that we represent about a fifth of the elementary population that eventually turns into our middle schoolers. And so they're all coming from other districts, and I know from experience that there is some level of choice about middle schools of where kids are coming to. So it's not just looking at our own population, it's understanding that impact. And also the impact of what academy enrollment looks like and where people are coming from to be placed into academies that they're choosing. That includes CTE attendance as well, and schools of choice kind of things. One of the things that is tangentially connected to this, but I think important to consider, is what is the ultimate goal of doing this? Is it creating neighborhood schools, or is it creating equitable instructional opportunity in every school that we have? And that's one of the things that I've been most impressed and pushing for, frankly, is the alignment of curriculum and instruction and expectations. And I know that there is enormous work going around that. And these are all pieces that will come into play when we start to say, yes, we've taken all this and we've looked at it and we're going to change this and this and this. And so I don't know how much you can change or how little you can change to get toward that type of goal. So part of what we need to understand is what is the ideal future state that we're looking for when we're talking about adjusting boundaries. Trustee Caffrey.
So I have I guess, two quick questions. One is that I think your point is really interesting, especially about academies. And would part of this discussion be if there is high demand for a certain type of academy or CTE program, would that also inform the programs that we have at our other schools? So would that be a part of the discussion? Let's say everyone wants to, I'm not even going to give an example, but you see my question.
They're iterative questions. We can start here and go outward forever. And I think the most important piece is for us as a board and as a district to understand what our ultimate goal is in even looking at this. I know one of it would be to say, are we utilizing our facilities appropriately? Are there schools that should close or be combined, or different things in different usage for different schools? But this is rather intense and long-range stuff, but every journey starts with a single step, right? Trustee Munoz.
And, taking it one step further, the cost of keeping a school open, even though the enrollment has lowered, right? Is that possible? And how would it affect the school's the school budget? Mm-hmm. Because we do have, for example, we do have programs at just to start with the Santa Barbara high schools, mm-hmm. Santa Barbara High, San Marcos, and Dos Pueblos. And then, of course, we also have programs at the dual language program at McKinley, for example, and at Harding we have the university partnership and so forth. So is it possible to keep those schools open even with decreased enrollment, and what would that look like?
Yeah, those are good questions, and I think I've seen studies about the overly optimistic expectations about how much money you save by closing a school. So it's a great question. Trustee Caffrey, and then we'll go back to is it your turn? All right, Trustee Beal.
So I don't know if you were asking if you wanted us to rank the importance of one over the other. I mean, I certainly feel that, in my opinion, is that the transfer policies to create a more equitable experience for our student at all our schools aligns with the priorities that we have set as a board to have really excellent instruction at all of our schools. Mm-hmm. So for me, that really is that priority. Certainly neighborhood schools, we want students to feel like they belong, and certainly families who are around neighborhood schools, that is going to improve their sense of belonging. I find it extraordinarily complex because, as Trustee Munoz said, we have a DLI school in one of our neighborhoods, and we have a charter school right in the middle, a very large charter school right in the middle of one of our neighborhoods. And so if we're really going to go by the neighborhood school, we would really be redrawing some boundaries in a very interesting way and impact not only our schools in our district, but in the charter school district. And I don't know what we do with, we have, I guess, 3 schools in close proximity. So McKinley enrollment, is it forcing children to go to other schools? These are big questions. So I think we have to, at this meeting, we would probably touch on those subjects, but if I wanted to walk out of this meeting, I would like to land on what a change in our transfer policy could look like and what the impact would be.
Trustee Caffrey.
So to me, it seems like we can't only handle the transfer policy without looking at our boundaries. We should be doing both at the same time, that it's kind of part of a larger discussion. And then also, when I have looked up case studies of boundary adjustments, it doesn't seem like it necessarily has to be an either or proposition in terms of access to programs, balanced schools, and also minimizing transportation time. So I think that there are really smart ways to do this where we could accomplish several goals at the same time. And I think like the ultimate goal is, yes, excellent school experience at every school, efficient use of our facilities, optimizing our use of facilities, like making it financially sustainable, and then proximity, decreasing transportation cost.
Student trustee, any comments or questions? No? Okay. Trustee Beal.
So agreed, we have to look at boundaries. We can't create a transfer policy without looking at boundaries. But trying to make a decision about transfer policy and saying, oh, we want neighborhood schools, that may be more than we can do at once. That's all I'm saying about that.
To me, it does not seem like we're going to make any changes after one meeting. No. Yeah. This is kind of the beginning of a process.
So I want to turn back to the superintendent and say, this is a first step. This is trying to gather information. What do we think the most important? If we could prioritize all the things we're talking about, what's the first thing that you want to look at?
Transfer policy.
I mean, I would like enrollment and capacity data for every school. I think that would be very helpful as a starting point. And then
So what I would presume is that we're going to want to see a map and review what the exact boundaries look like, and and from my perspective, understanding who lives within those boundaries and then where do they end up going. Those are the most important things for me. And I think from there you can start to talk about transportation. You're also going to need to understand why somebody in this boundary that's going here is going there. Mm-hmm. There's everything from, I went there when my parents went there, or that works best for us as a family because it could be a parent dropping a child off on the way to and from work. There's every possible reason. But we need to know where we are to begin with, and then what our goal of where we want to be.
Actually, Board Member Caffrey brings up a very interesting question. So I don't know that we're actually talking about different things. Capacity, right? Like, what does that mean for a school? Where is a school exceeding its capacity to have reasonable classroom sizes and a good use of the facilities, that they're not having like a class in a closet or something like that, or that teachers are being asked to teach large classes to just fit into the school? I think that is potentially happening at some of our schools. So capacity, and maybe even the idea not just of a maximum capacity, but what's a minimum capacity to keep that school alive?
That makes sense.
And if you look at a boundary, within the school boundary, is that capacity already there? And then are students like going elsewhere? And what is that?
Yeah.
What does that mean to us?
I might suggest also that the issue of capacity is likely quite different in elementary schools than secondary schools. Because as we've learned, as we've been talking about the 7-period day, part of the capacity of what kind of electives we can offer depends on how many students are there. And when one school is quite small and one is quite large, that creates some inequities in terms of the offerings. So there might be some questions about at secondary level, and particularly middle school, what might even out the populations in a way that offers more equitable or more equivalent kind of opportunities. Yeah.
And I know this could, as you mentioned, go on forever and be super complex, but I also wonder about zone systems of basically there are zone systems for students where you might be zoned for a few different schools. You rank your options, and then based on capacity of the schools, students are allocated to a school.
I'd like to learn more about that,
so
but I think we're getting into solution generation as
I'm just
opposed to
curious.
data.
No, I'm just curious if that, I'm not saying that is the solution. I'm just saying, how do we learn about things like that? Because I think that is one approach that some districts are taking. Doesn't even work. I have no idea. So how would that come up, I guess, in this discussion?
And I think that's where we have to be realistic about how much we can get from one study session and plan additional study sessions and plan a pathway that takes us from this first study session to what might ultimately come out of it. And that's, for me, how that would work. Anything else? I appreciate the opportunity to bring this. Do you feel like you have clear enough direction, and is it doable?
I am going to do my best to try to sum up what I heard, and I'm going to ask Dr. Hugh, who's also working with me on this, because she and I already looked at reaching out to your point earlier about someone that could help us with this work, because this is really, data work, gathering information, looking at maps and things like that we don't have the capacity to do. So what I heard, and I like what you said about the goal, and I would recommend if we use the title of it as the goal is we're just going to study the current situation, the current reality. So I think if we can keep the conversation for the November 7th meeting, can we just all agree and understand the current reality of what exists? Because I don't think we're ready to define what we want it to be. And what I heard, and I'm going to ask Dr. Hugh, if you have something different, please jump in afterwards, that it would be important for us to bring you our current enrollment and capacity data by school, which will include both minimum and maximum capacity based on all the types of classrooms that exist. I hear you, Dr. Bielon, as someone teaching in a classroom, in a closet, I pray not, but if a teacher is out there, please write to me. I don't think that's the case. But I think if we start with just let's look at every school, its enrollment, its capacity. If we can give you a couple of years back for the enrollment, that could also help. That's one piece of information that I heard is important for this conversation. Another piece of information that I think would really be helpful is then to have the geographic map of each school with its boundaries. If it's at all possible, I'm looking to Mr. Tedeschi here. I know with our Zoom bus program, they do have a little bit of information on sort of routes of where families are being routed for some schools, not all, in elementary for sure, and then some of the routes that are going to the special ed programs, which leads me to the next piece of information, which is really about what are the programs that exist at each of these schools. So, for example, we have different special ed programs at different schools. They don't all go to the same school because they're housed differently, whether it's by mild to moderate, moderate to severe, and or the grade levels. And then, so that would be the other information that we would bring to this study session. And I think that would then lead to getting information on what are the current trends in transfers going in and going out, coming in and going out by schools at the junior high and high school. And we can definitely get that. I hear a request, though I don't know if we can do it in time. Well, let me scratch that. I also heard a request of demographic breakdown of that pattern of coming in, going out, and in the school types. Is that accurate?
Yes, so I'm interested in the demographic data in terms of, yes, how is that changing the demographic of the home school and also the school they're transferring to? Because I do know that when the Peabody Charter boundary was drawn, it was to actually make it a very diverse school, and that has worked, even though it's a very interesting boundary map, right? Students do have to be driven to that or bused to that school. And so I think we should be mindful if we are contemplating changes, that we are not concentrating a demographic in one school. I think that is an inequity that that would be unintended if we did that, from my point of view.
So I will include that, which would be race, ethnicity, language status, and foster homeless.
SES,
And you just said socioeconomically disadvantaged, SED.
Okay, you said disadvantage.
Yes, thank you. So that'll be throughout what you're getting. I think that's the list that I can get us to. But what I do need to have us define next is what you asked earlier, which is what is the goal? Because we're going to have to be disciplined, and I'm saying that with all due respect, board members, about the result of that conversation so that we can manage our thinking and not go to solutionitis, which can happen quickly, but also not get stuck in analysis paralysis. So the process for the study session, I think, is the goal is if I can get a definition of what is the outcome you want to walk away with. When you leave that November 7th, what is it that you want to walk away with knowing and or a direction you want to give for the next steps? Does that help to define where I'm thinking of what I need next? Yes.
Trustee Beal.
So if we're looking at this as a stepwise process, my thought is this is a lot of information we're going to receive, and we're not going to be able to process it by the end of like 2 hours or 3 hours of listening to this. So I feel that there would need to be maybe a little opportunity to ask questions. This is a study session. I've never been in a public study session that's like this, so I'm not sure how that really works in terms of who gets to ask questions and when. That's not a board member. And then I am interested in having it recorded because I feel, if that's possible, because I feel like people will want to see all this information we're getting. And then I would love to have, I don't know if we would then think about having another meeting. Maybe we would talk about at the meeting whether we're going to have another meeting to talk about it. And then if we do choose to do that, have some sort of input mechanism for the community if they see this data and they have something to say also.
Yeah, so I feel like that's a different purpose. So I think it would be wise to maybe start with, to your point, let's get all that information in a room, have you, and if we decide public that comes, ask questions. But I think from there, we need to then decide next steps. And it probably won't even be in that session. We just have to processing all of that information, getting the public trust questions. But I hear what you're saying, more like a town hall that would be a different event. We can record it, that's easy. We can make all the information you get public. It's a public study session. What I think you're talking about is an engagement step that would be more like a town hall that would happen at another time, is my thought. Because you can't do both at the same time and try to keep it all. It would be a little bit chaotic in my mind. But I mean, if you guys think otherwise, it seems to me like it's two different events, and we would need to get through one before we decide what the second one would look like.
Right. I think I tacked that on because I thought, where do we, if we have a study session, we look at information, and then we say, okay, now we want to actually talk about making some decisions because, I don't know if that would happen at a board meeting, or would we talk about something, or we say, you know what, we're done, everybody go home and think about it, and then somebody could bring in an agenda item at the next board meeting?
Similar to what we're doing now, might be a conversation that was what's next at a regular meeting. Yeah.
So I'm getting agreement that we're bringing you information. It's a study the information session. Ask questions of the data that's before us. And
begin the process of thinking.
Begin the process of thinking what's next. That's the study session.
Yeah.
Dr. Hugh, is there anything else that you would like to bring up, or are we good with what you and I discussed? And good? Okay. And I think Mr. Vance, also you're helping some, okay. I just want to make sure. So the next thing I'll let the board know is, in that case, we will be looking to get a company to help us with some of the data gathering and putting this together for the board study session, and Dr. Hugh and I will take care of that next.
Will the company specialize in boundary review and adjustment? Is that the type of company that you're looking to hire?
Yes, the company that I've been engaging with so far is one that we already use for our boundaries, and they are well versed in studying enrollment trends, including projections and what they call student yield, which is here's your neighborhoods and here's how many school-aged children we think are going to come out of those neighborhoods. So they have done this for many other districts, and we already work with them. We have a partnership with them for some of our other work.
Yeah, it's surprisingly what seems like would be a niche opportunity. There are plenty of people helping districts with these kind of decisions. So good. Thank you for your research on that. All right. That finishes G1. It brings us back to our action item, which we had continued, and it moves us on to Section I, acceptance of donations for August 25, 2026. Are there any, then there's no public comments. Is there a motion on this? Trustee Beal.
I move to accept donations for August 25th, 2026 with gratitude.
A second? Trustee Caffrey.
I second. With gratitude.
All right. Student trustee?
Aye.
Shall we wait? We have three. Okay. All in favor? Aye. We'll call it 3 with an abstention or an absence. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. There are no public comments. Are there items on the agenda that any trustee wants to remove?
I'd like to I have a few questions about the school calendar.
About which one?
School calendar, that is J5.
Okay, we'll pull that item. Any other requests? All right. So at this point, I think I would like to go ahead and take a moment to approve or look for a motion for the remaining consent items, and then we'll come back to the single items. Is there a motion for the consent item agenda as presented with the elimination of item 5?
I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of J5, the school calendar.
All right. A second?
I second.
All right. Student trustee, what is your advisory vote?
Aye.
Board members, all in favor? Aye. Passes 3 with 1 absent. And that'll bring us to a discussion then about the school year calendar. Trustee Caffrey, what are you,
Thank you very much. I just had a couple questions. One is, do we collaborate with our feeder districts like Goleta and Hope to ensure that our school calendars overlap?
So we don't have a meeting where we get together and collaborate around what our calendar is going to be, but we've been doing this a long time, and so what happens is they're usually waiting for us and what our calendar is going to be, but I will send it out. So I send it out to all the superintendents of the local districts for them to review what we think's coming to the board. So they got that. They got these calendars in advance as well. And then sometimes I'll get phone calls. Hey, I saw this. What are you doing here? Or why are you doing, the February weekends split over 2 weekends? And those kind of questions come up. So that kind of collaboration does happen, yes. But they generally are wanting our calendar approved, and then they'll follow our calendar.
Yes, I just ask because so many families have kids in both Santa Barbara and a feeder district. So I was curious how much they are aligned. Yeah, but it sounds like they do follow our lead, or
Yes.
that they tend to be the same?
Yes, they tend to be pretty close to the same. There are some minor differences, but they do like to stay aligned with us just because of that we share families.
May I ask a question? Can I assume that we collaborate with Santa Barbara City College to align our breaks with theirs, or is that an incorrect assumption?
We do align our spring break with theirs.
Correct.
Yes.
And an interesting thing that came up, and I don't know that there's a solution to this, is I believe several UCSB professors wrote to us several months ago asking that we align our calendar to their calendar, which I was wondering, do we send them our calendar and say, can you please align your calendar with our calendar?
I could be bold and do that if you want me to, but I do not.
They had a valid, we're families, we have children, and so they can't choose to not teach during the spring break, so they miss an opportunity to pay for spring break, you know, to take their children on a spring break. They have spring break, their children are in school, and we don't. So I think it's, obviously, there are a lot of mechanics. They're on a quarter system. But I wonder if we should just send them our calendar.
It would be great if they lined up with City College spring break, then we would be great. You know, so maybe them two should collaborate and get together. But we do align with City College's spring break. You know, largely when we have kids in dual enrollment classes that are actually out that campus, and it doesn't align. Those two don't align, so it's hard. We can't do both. So.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just one more quick question, and I'm curious how we use the school calendar to maximize attendance. If we think, if we have data about how our decisions impact attendance and whether we see fluctuations in attendance through the year, and we think about how to use the calendar to make sure our students are in school more?
We have done some of that over the years with certain decisions previous boards have made. In particular, for example, we years ago adopted a board holiday in September, October. That was largely related to attendance issues. And then we also did make decisions around the winter break length based on some attendance data. That has then now changed due to, you know, public interest in having a not as long of a winter break. So those things do come up. We've now reached a point, though, especially with the new bargaining language that we agreed to, where we have a pretty stable calendar in place that seems to be the sweet spot for all those. I mean, there's so many competing interests on school calendar, including attendance, but then there's other preferences people have. But we seem to have reached a kind of a sweet spot where people can accept, and the calendar and attendance, you know, is probably the optimum is this, I would suspect.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other comment? Do I have a motion to accept item J5?
I move to accept item J5. Is that sufficient, or do I need to read the whole
That's
thing?
fine. It's the approval of the school year 27, 28, and 28, 29 calendars. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Student Advisory Board.
Aye.
Vote. Board vote? Aye. Motion passes 4-0. All right. That brings us to, we're returned to the consent, and we've got some coming events. There's lots of things on the calendar about open houses and things coming up. I could make sure you're taking a look at that. And then that brings us to future agenda items. Are there any requests for future agenda items?
May I just make an announcement? Because of the heat wave, there were some back-to-school nights that were changed. One tonight, tomorrow. So if you signed up for tomorrow, that's to be rescheduled. Was there another one, Steve?
It's just McKinley tomorrow.
Yeah. And hopefully not a couple of more either later this week or in the future, but just so the board and the public is aware.
Were there any other changes in terms of early releases or anything like that? Was
Turns out we have a minimum date tomorrow already planned, so that takes care of what we would have done for those schools.
It looks like today was the peak, too, of the temperatures, so.
Actually, we have our schools in different microclimates, so some schools fall on it and some schools didn't.
Yeah, that
So
makes
we're
sense.
really looking at this on a school-by-school basis.
Very good. All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 15th. Being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 9:19. Yes. Oh, we need to, I need to. Can you go back? I need to go back. I apologize. The meeting is not adjourned. The meeting is adjourned to closed session at 9:19. Do I need to reopen it?
I think he needs to capture you on video saying that the meeting is adjourned to closed session. It's recording, go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right, so we made a mistake. The meeting is adjourned to closed session, not adjourned. We will adjourn from closed session and make note of that time. So, thank you. All right, that said, we are adjourning to closed session.